Few. Perfect. All right. Okay. So, I'm going to spend the next 4 minutes briefly explaining aromanticism and romanticism. If I have any mistakes, feel free to correct me. So, as we all know, or as I hope we all know, there are different. I haven't prepared, so I have some. Okay, so here we are. We're good. Focus. We're gonna be good. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Welcome. I was just waiting. That's why I was telling you. Okay, so as we all know, different people experience different types of attraction to other people. That's why we have the concepts of heterosexuality, if you're attracted to the opposite sex or gender; homosexuality, if you're attracted to the same sex or gender; bisexuality, if you're attracted to both genders; and asexuality, if you are attracted to none of the above. Now, we do recognize that there are other sexual orientations, pansexual, etc. However, for simplicity, I'm just going to leave it at that for now. So, there is this concept, sexual attraction. Now, that is a big thing within the asexual community, obviously, because the lack of sexual attraction basically defines our community. However, even though asexuals do not experience sexual attraction to other people, they can still be attracted to other people. Sounds strange, huh? This is what we call romantic attraction. And in the same way that someone who's, for example, heterosexual can look at someone of the opposite sex or gender and say, oh, wow, they're good looking. I desire to engage sexually with them. In the same way, someone who is hetero-romantic. Now, if you missed that, we just take the first part of the word hetero, homo, bi, and tack it onto romantic. So someone who is hetero-romantic can look at someone and not say, oh, I would like to engage in sexual activity with you, but rather, oh, you look interesting, I would like to, or desire to form a romantic relationship with you, or engage with you romantically. So that's the difference between romanticism and sexual, or sexuality, I guess you could say. Now, as we see with the spectrum, we have heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, asexuality, etc. That extends in the same way to romantic orientations. So we have heteroromanticism, homoromanticism, biromanticism, aromanticism, which we are discussing today, and of course all the other parts that I'm not going to mention. So, does everyone kind of get the basic idea? Does anyone not? If you don't understand anything I said, please put up your hand. Perfect. That is what I like to hear. So, I think we are doing well. So, basically, the divide here is we have romantic people and we have aromantic people. And today, what Amy and I thought we would do with this session is look at the divide between romantics and aromantics to see what some of the differing and same components are, and maybe compare them and see where that divide is and what we can do to maybe break it down a little bit. So, if you want to write romanticism on that side, and I'll just help you out, right? Oh, I'm going to do both. I just want to use a lot of space here, so just so everyone can see, I'll do aromanticism. These are very small chalks, so forgive me if you're wrong. I think I'm already writing it. Oh, I'm running out of space too. Okay. Last words are maybe small. I've been spelling really badly today, so yeah, if you notice any mistakes in any materials, that's me. Okay. Aromanticism, that looks good. If it doesn't, we all know what it kind of says. And romanticism is a little smaller there, but we have the two sides. Yes? Yes?
Yes.
Anyone know? Put up your hand if you don't see that. Perfect. Okay. Oh, we do have larger charts. Okay. So I'm just going to circle these, and you can circle yours as well. Okay. Let's discuss. So obviously we have aromanticism on this side, it's very large, and we have romanticism on that side. It's a little smaller, but still there. So we have the two. Perfect. So what I am going to do here is I'm going to generally poll you and see what you think about aromanticism versus romanticism, what you think are certain components of aromanticism and romanticism, that kind of thing. So, any thoughts whatsoever? I will take you right there.
All right.
Yes, you.
My name is Marlene, and I say aromanticism is where you don't want to be in a relationship, past a friendship.
Okay, that is interesting. And we will look at that later. I should have Amy write this. Amy,
Yeah.
next I can have you write this. More than a friendship. It's faster if I don't write, so I'm going to stop after I finish this word first. Okay, so that is a possible component of aromanticism, which we'll certainly look at. Anything else? I saw a few hands. Yes.
You said this already,
Okay.
but could you distinguish, are you distinguishing aromantic versus romanticism on a spectrum within asexuality? Or
Correct.
Okay.
You can go outside of that.
Okay, but that was going to be my question. So I think of aromantic going more along with the idea of asexuality, but we're talking about sort of Cartesian planes.
They follow the same concept, yes. Okay. Good.
It's a spectrum in one way for romanticism and a spectrum in another way for sexuality.
That's correct. That works.
Okay.
So I don't quite know what you want me to do.
Don't write anything
Don't
down.
write anything.
Sorry, that was my clarification, so I thought we might be talking about.
Yeah, so for clarification, aromanticism is anyone who does not experience romantic attraction. Romanticism is anyone who does experience romantic attraction. So that is heteroromantic, homoromantic. Those words are really hard to say. So if you can't hear me, I'll go slower. Heteroromantic, homoromantic, biromantic, etc. Just all flat aromantic. Yes.
I would say for aromanticism, it's not even as cut and dry as don't want something more than a friendship. It's that you just don't want something that isn't platonic. You can have the feelings for somebody that don't quite fit into friendship feelings that are still very platonic feelings. And I think that still fits into aromanticism because there's absolutely nothing romantic about it.
And you are very correct about that, which is why I said we were going to discuss this later, because this is not entirely accurate. But yes, we will certainly discuss that later because there are far more components than don't want a friendship, and that's not even entirely true. Okay, anybody else? This board's looking a little bare, but yes, you can choose your side.
I would say for aromanticism, I would say you don't experience romantic attraction.
That is super perfect to put up here. I like it. I love it. And actually, I'll get Amy to put up the opposite one, so I'm turning my back to you. Okay, anyone else? Yes?
Well, I identify as aromantic, and I just like to say that although I don't feel romantic attraction, I do feel attraction that is still important to me, that does fall along a platonic basis, though it's not romantic.
Very fair. Yes. And we will actually get to that discussion eventually. Right now, we're just kind of laying out the difference here, the divide. And I do realize that not necessarily everything that's put up here is true, and that's why we will discuss it, break it down, have a group discussion after we have this little divide here. Yes?
Does non-sexual physical attraction fall into romanticism, or does it fall into either?
Physical attraction meaning,
I crave physical intimacy with people, but I don't want to have sex. Is that a romantic thing?
I think that's sensual.
correct, sensual attraction. Romanticism is, yeah, right things, go for it. Yes, so looking specifically at romantic romantic attraction, that is the desire to engage romantically with someone. Desiring to be physically intimate with them is not, it's somewhat related but not really. So there are aromantics who can desire to be physically intimate with others. There can be romantics who don't want to be physically intimate, so they're not as good.
I just wanted to say that like at the last conference I went to, I met a person who did not identify as asexual, but did identify as aromantic. And they like to have sexual relationships with other people, but don't feel romantically. And that's shame within our society, but there are also non-asexual aromantic people.
That's very true. And it's not frequent, but it is the case where we can have a divide between sexual orientation and romantic orientation. So you can have someone who's heterosexual but also homoromantic, and that can clearly be confusing for some people because they're like, oh, I want to have sex with this person, but I don't want to have a romantic relationship. So there is that divide, and I think with more visibility with asexuality and romantic orientations in general, I think that could actually help a further community with that. Yes?
So what you were saying, is that what, a romance?
Sorry?
What you said right there before, was that like a romance or something?
Could you define romance?
When I hear the term romance, I think
Two guys
more two guys who are best friends.
So about more than best friends,
That was going to be my question though. What is considered romantic? Is it like a love? I don't know. I went on the website and then I hated it because it got really, really religious. And I like the 5 love languages, whether you express and feel love through physically or acts of service or compliments or gifts. And would that be a way of dividing up that romanticism? So would romanticism be like compliments and doing things for a person? Like, I don't know what you mean by romanticism, I think.
Okay.
Newbie. So
Maybe
it's
just
for if you're on
think
YouTube.
of- Well, basically, like all the things that you would do in a romantic relationship that does include sex, like a normal romantic relationship, but just without the sex.
Yeah.
So like that would be romance. So like kissing and cuddling, or
Okay.
just being emotionally intimate.
Okay.
Thank you for that. 'Cause
Thank
that's
you.
far simpler than what I was going to try to explain. Yeah, so it's like any sexual relationship with homosex, basically. You, right there.
For instance, there's not as much kind of on the romantic side. One of the things I wanted to add, and I think it's sometimes helpful for us today is there's this concept sometimes called limerence, which is basically to describe kind of when you're getting into a romantic relationship, there's these feelings, kind of butterflies in the stomach, infatuation, that kind of like, you'll talk about like, oh, the passion of your love or whatever. And it's kind of those feelings, and that's something that there's a lot of discussion about, like aromantic, romantic, that's something that kind of sets the romantic experience apart, is that initial feeling of like limerence and like that absolute like infatuation with someone, and those like butterflies stomach and all that. So I think kind of that is something that tends to be associated more with romantics than aromantics.
Excellent, thank you. And now I don't actually know this for sure, so if I'm wrong, correct me, but those components aren't necessarily an aspect of all romantic attractions, as far as I'm aware. Our expert here agrees. So we're good. Okay. Now, any other? Yes?
And romanticism also being like wanting someone to be your girlfriend or boyfriend, like for lack of a
Yes, and a lot of romantic people do enter into these traditionally monogamous relationships, less the sex, for obvious reasons, although there are different cases there. It's all very confusing sometimes. But yes, there is the concept of having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and it's just non-sexual for a lot of asexual people who are romantic. I'm getting nodding. Okay, anyone else?
I think I'd just like to say that people who experience romantic attraction describe it so many different ways, and I think that non-asexual people would do the same thing. They wouldn't say, well, my romance is romantic because I have sex, but it's hard to pull it apart from other types of positive interaction with other people. So what I've heard from other people who do experience
very much. This is why she's
Just
the
grab
expert.
first.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So we have lots of notes here. Wonderful. Anything else? You again.
Yeah, I just want to throw in kind of one like fun little tidbit. We were talking about like between like aromantic things and romantic things. We were talking about kind of the difference between like a squish and a crush. Yeah. And
I will explain this
where you know like if a crush is like the traditional kind of romantic infatuation with someone, then often the term squish is kind of referred to, you know, what some people will call like a friend crush, where it's like platonic infatuation, where it's like, oh man, you are such a cool person, I want to like hang out with you and like go do fun things with you, and there may be no romantic attraction involved. That's kind of an example of, you know, like platonic attraction, where it's like, I don't want to be in a romantic relationship with you or do anything romantic with you, but you're just so cool. Let's like play board games and have movie nights.
Perfect. Thank you. So, if anyone missed that, if you hear the term squish, it's just an aromantic version of a crush, or what you so wonderfully explained there. Okay. Yes. So, anyone else?
I don't know what I'm trying to say about this, but I just am thinking about my best friend who is heterosexual. She was dating my guy for a very long time and he came out as gay, but he still wanted to marry her. And so there was a point in time where she was thinking about, you know, if that would make sense to enter into this marriage where they have been dating for so long, like, you know, they really trust each other. She was definitely in love with him. I don't talk to him as much as I talked to her, but I just thought it was very interesting. And it didn't end up going through or anything, but they're still very good friends, I suppose.
I don't want to put labels on anyone because I don't know the particular situation. So, but I will say just generally, even though it's not exactly related to the topic, there are several, if not many, cases where people who are homosexual, for example, will enter into a relationship and then even possibly marry a person of the opposite sex or gender. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who are homosexual are, instead of coming out as gay or lesbian now, are saying they're queer because they realize that there's the possibility for them to engage in or connect deeply with someone who they're not necessarily sexually attracted to. So, if that answers your question, perfect, thank you.
I just kind of have something to add to that experience. I knew of a couple who was a gay identified, self-identified male and a lesbian identified female who just happened to fall into each other's paths somehow. Similar experiences, and they actually are married now with like 3 or 4 children, and both identify as gay, but have realized that there's always, you know, a little bit of leeway, and they fell in love with each other for the experiences they had. So I think that what I've learned today, especially from all of these presentations, because I've been coming here knowing a lot about it, is that there's not really a definite label that you can stick to and expect to live your life that way, because it's never going to work out. There's always going to be changes in your experience and your lifestyle, and you're going to meet people you never thought you were going to meet and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to add that to that.
Perfect, thank you. Which is why sexuality is so complicated. I hope you all agree because it's, yeah. Anyway, okay, you.
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
You said crushes for romantic infatuation, squish for platonic infatuation. Is there, I've always thought of crush as being a sexual attraction as well. Is there a different term, or we're just adopting that as crush can be just romantic?
I'm going to poll the audience. Is there a different term? Okay. As far as I know, there isn't a different term. The term squish was created within the asexual community because it applies a lot more to the asexual community. And crush is, there was never really a distinction made between the romantic and the sexual infatuation of crush. So I think those terms are kind of one and the same.
So you can say that you're having an asexual crush if you needed to, or not.
If you needed to, or
Or you
could
just say not.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No worries. That's totally fine. Yes, go back.
Just a comment about that. I don't think I'd use crush to describe something that was sexual but not romantic.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay, that's fair. I guess I'm thinking, and maybe that's the connotation as well, is that crush is also often more associated with younger people, teens and preteens, and I have, who do you have a crush on? Well, and the yes, no, do you like me notes being handed across in grade school. So maybe that does make perfect sense. Hopefully the 12-year-olds that I teach are not thinking as sexually as they probably are. So maybe that's
Yeah.
why that
It's more-
fits as well as
I
it
guess
does.
you want to date that person. and
Yeah.
sex with them.
Right, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And at the same time, the English language, the way it was made, a lot of words can have multiple meanings, or they're very variant. So I'll just put it this way: the combination of the English language being so diverse and sexuality being so diverse makes things more complicated. So, but we try our best. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say as part of that, sexuality and romanticism are so heavily linked in our society that they're heavily linked in our language as well. And so, like the asexual and aromantic community, we've had to come up with our own caveats and our own words like squish, but the romanticism, it's still very heavily linked to sexuality, so we have a lot of words that are often sexualized, like crush. For high school and college students at least, can often be very sexual, but not always, and so that's part of why.
And yeah, I guess I'm thinking as well, I have a huge crush on Justin Bieber, or on Tom Cruise, or on Jennifer Aniston, or whoever. But yeah, it gets me fun. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if we have any more questions. The original intent of this whole aromanticism and versus, I guess you could say, romanticism was to show that they're not necessarily so different and so binary. There is a gray scale between aromanticism and romanticism in the same way that there's a gray scale between sexuality and asexuality. And so I think what's important to look at is not necessarily are you aromantic? Oh, I'm romantic, you can't be friends. It's more that, oh, we're both people, that's wonderful. So, yeah. Okay, so I think we have done a decent job with that. I don't know how well this all worked out, but I will let you in on a little secret. I've been super busy with the conference just every minute of the last 2 days. So I've only planned this for 10 minutes before. But that's okay, I think it's going really well. So why don't we kind of continue our discussion, because I think we were doing very well there. And yeah, so if you have any questions or any discussion points, I can certainly answer questions. Others in the room have shown that they can certainly answer questions. Yes?
Can you talk about lit romanticism?
Lit romanticism, yes. Now, just to ensure I have the correct terms and definition, lit romanticism is being romantically attracted to someone but not desiring reciprocation. Yes. Okay, so lit romanticism, from my understanding, and I'm not the expert at all, so please, if I say something wrong, don't quote me on it. Lit romanticism isn't necessarily romantic orientation in the same way that hetero-romanticism or romanticism and bi-romanticism are, from what I know, because lit romanticism doesn't specify a gender in which you're romantically attracted to. So, from my understanding, you could be lit romantic or lit hetero-romantic. I don't know if that's a term. But anyway, so lit romanticism, from what I've understood, is there are people who say, oh, I really am romantically attracted to you, but as soon as you start to reciprocate those feelings, I'm not really so into that anymore. I think that's that, and it's all very complicated, and I haven't done a lot of looking at that, so that's what I can speak to. Does anyone else have more information there, or shall we move on to a new question? I have a hand back.
Lit romantic tends to be considered one of the gray romantic areas. So in the middle there, along with Demi and Sapio and a bunch of the other ones there.
Thank you very much. Okay, so there we are. Okay, anything else? Any questions, discussion points? You had a hand up first.
Yeah, I have a question about the difference between platonic relationships and friendships. So I don't.
Absolutely, and I actually was going to go through this and I forgot to. So thank you very much. Now, even though aromantic people don't experience romantic attraction to others, they can still desire to become part of other relationships that are still as meaningful and all of that as a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship, just without necessarily the romantic portion, which is where we get terms like platonic relationship, which is very close friends and people may end up living together and that kind of thing, but there's just not necessarily a romantic component to that. And then I'm forgetting all the other terms. It can be considered friendship, but what we're specifically talking about with platonic relationships, I believe, is something maybe deeper than friendship, because you can be friends with someone but then not have an incredibly close emotional bond, whereas with these platonic relationships it can become a lot more close. Yes?
The word I would use is commitment between a platonic relationship that you don't have with your regular friends.
That is excellent. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way to look at it. Okay. I've answered lots from you recently, but I'll get back to you. I'll give someone else a chance. Who else has a question? Okay, I'm pretty
Two things. First is the question came up with kind of what makes, say, platonic relationship different than friendship. I think one thing is friendship is kind of a really hugely general term that describes all different kinds of relationships. But a lot of the time what people mean when they say like platonic relationship is they mean like an established relationship. So it's kind of the difference between, like having a crush on someone versus, like actually like seriously dating them. And then like you're dating and you have an agreement like, okay, this is what our relationship is going to be, this is what our kind of commitment is going to be, this is the level of intimacy that we're expecting to have with each other. And so it's kind of, again, like someone mentioned, commitment is a big thing. You can have very low levels of commitment, like hanging out sometimes for a period, anywhere to very high levels of commitment, like you live together, we share finances, and or like if one of us is gone, we'll make sure to Skype every 2 days or something like that. Also, it can be like the level of intimacy, whether it's someone who's like, yeah, we like play video games together, versus someone who's like, I want to spill out my soul to you and like discuss my health with you. And like with any relationship, you can have varying levels of these. And I mean, like when we talk about romantic relationships, we have all these different things. Like, are you just dating? Like, you go on a date once? Are you seriously dating? Are you married? Things like that. Whereas I feel like what happens with platonic relationships is just everything becomes friends. And it's like, well, what kind of friends? Like, are they like your work friends who you have lunch with sometimes on your work lunch break, or are they like your best friends who you've been friends with for like 20 years, and like you share like all of your like secrets with? And I feel like sometimes friendship is just like such a big word that like you really expect us to refer to all of these as the same thing.
Okay, so anyone else? Anything else? Yes.
Okay, so I was on the AIM website the other day, and I saw a post that made me think about sort of the relationship between like a romantic drive and romantic orientation. And what's interesting is like I just thought to myself, and I posted it on this topic, and the actor said that it made a lot of sense and it did help them. So I was wondering if anyone else can sort of identify with this. In terms of like romantic drive, for me, I've always sort of found this to be like two levels of crushes. First level being like you actually think to yourself, okay, I like this person. Whereas the second level is more like, oh no, I actually really like you a lot. How did that happen? Sort of type thing. And like what I thought was maybe like romantic drive could be more related to the first level of crushes where you make a decision to yourself, okay, I like that person, and how many times do you do that, how many people are you like at the same time? And then the second level might be like your romantic orientation type thing.
Can I answer that question? Or should I continue?
Just a comment on that. It is important to note that when I think, I'm not sure whether what I've had in the past is squishes or crushes, but it is important to note that you don't consciously decide to have a crush or a squish. It's just something that kind of, leaps upon you.
Leaps upon you. Yeah, you have a good, yeah, go for it.
Back to that, like, longitudinal, like, a lot of the times it is something that just leaps upon you. But for me, like, that's just, would be sort of like the second level where you just actually really like that person a lot. But I have had conscious decisions to myself, where I think to myself, I pick you, and I pick you, and I like you, and that's what it's going to be. And it has actually led to this, like, this is supposed to be a little thing that I actually like it a lot, type of thing.
That's interesting.
I agree. So do you have a question that I didn't answer, or we're good? Well, thank you for your contribution. Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
I have a question about, like, this isn't necessarily for you, but it's more for, like, everybody. Has anybody experienced, like, different levels of acceptance for, like, their level of romanticism? Because I think I'm aromantic, like, I'm pretty sure. But when I first came out of the closet as asexual to my mom, like, I kind of, I wasn't sure yet. And so I think she's flashed pretty hard onto, like, okay, well, if she's not going to be sexual, she better at least be romantic. and, get some kind of romantic, asexual relationship happening. So, they can at least adopt or something. And carry on the family. And I'm just like, I don't know if she's going to, she's already accepted the asexuality. I don't know if she's going to accept your romanticism.
You had a comment, yeah.
That does, like, along the same line. When there'll be articles, like just recently, the Toronto Star had an article on asexuality, and they'll end with, like, so it may seem totally weird that these people don't experience sexual attraction, but they can still have meaningful lives because they have romantic attraction. And I so clearly you don't think much of my life. And, like, as if the caveat that, okay, we can still be normal with romanticism is, like, what makes it okay, and, like, if you don't have that level of normal, then that, like, goes too far.
So, in short, if you're going to write a news article after this, don't do that. Yeah, any comments?
Yeah, I would just add to that it's true in my experience, sometimes people react more strongly to the idea that you don't want a partner than they do to the idea that you might not want to have sex with potential partners or have a sexual attraction to those partners. So, I actually had one guy who said, asexual I can deal with, but aromantic, he said, that hurts me a little. It makes you very spooky. I thought that was really very yeah, he said it was almost inhuman, and that really bothered me. That idea that this might actually that romantic connection or that makes me think. That this person can form some kind of connection with the world that we understand. And when we are asexual and aromantic like me, we are that one extra step less relatable to people who experience both. And so you're right, we can definitely be sometimes even less accepted.
Perfect.
I find that there are some people who are in the conclusion that in order to be happy, you need to have another intimate partner, but basically it's sensual or sexual. And, like, yeah, I identify as aromantic, but I'm just completely confident in myself that I don't want to be in that. I'm fine being in that. And I think the key is, when it comes to parents, is not accepting that. Because my mom to this day, she was psychic and said, told us that she's having, I'm going to get married and I have 2 kids, and she's like, really? And she's convinced that this is going to happen, that it's just a phase. But I'm still completely happy in myself, and that is enough to make me go on without having to worry about what she says to me, what she thinks is going to happen. She'll get used to it, eventually. Maybe she'll be happy about it, but eventually she'll have to deal with it.
Yeah, in the back there.
Can I just speak as the parent of an asexual? Yes, we're very worried that you are going to die of loneliness. And I'm really happy that there's, like, at least more than 5 of you here, and I've been taking down names and phone numbers for my daughter who's not here because she's less concerned about it than I am. But yeah, as your parents, we're terrified. about what's going to happen to us after we die. Who's going to look after you? Who's going to hold your hand at our funeral? Who's going to help you dig the grave if the grave diggers don't show up? So that's another thing. It's also, like I went to the first session, they're like, yeah, this is a fairly new thing. No kidding. Okay, we're the further generation up, so we're trying to look after our dying parents, and our spouses aren't looking so good these days either. And then you want us to cope with all this new terminology that you throw at us, and it's really important to you, and we're just trying to, like, okay, where's the bill? What do I do that? What did you say? You signed me up to 24 muffins tomorrow? Oh, and you're asexual. Okay, that's fine, dear. That's right. So, feed it to us, please.
Oh, yeah.
Slowly. Okay? Because you're like, oh, you have to know this about me because you're the most important person in my life. Well, yes, but actually that was just like, sometimes it's too much information, and you have to give it to us slowly. And when we see that you're doing well and that you're thriving, we will calm down. But we have to see you thriving. You can't just be denying and telling us that everything's okay, and then you're like having a meltdown at midnight the next week about something because we're going to see they're not okay, and of course they're not okay. So just, you have to show us that you're doing well. And if you're not doing well, don't start hiding it because it'll make us worry more, because we know you better than you think we do. Even if we don't understand all those words you use, and I don't understand what's on that board. But still, like, we knew you before you were born, so we love you dearly, but we don't always get it. But you have to decide what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, start with the big ideas first, and then read your way down to the finer details that we really need to know. And don't give us all the stuff we don't need to know. But we want to know that you're really happy. And the way you can position that to us, if I could just give some more advice, nobody else is saying that. Okay, I'm gonna take it word of time. Is show us that you're happy, because our great fear, at least my great fear, is intimacy. So like, what, you're asexual, there's 1 in 100, 50% of them are men, so are they on the table or off the table? Okay, and how are you going to know, and how do you know that people aren't just faking it because they like you and they figure they can fix you later? So we're worried about all these things that can go wrong. The only really good thing about it is that we're really happy that you're never going to come home pregnant. So yeah, it's a process for us, and a lot of people have talked today about it. It was a process, I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah, so are we. So, but we need way more time.
I'm happy that I'm going through school, and therefore I can learn things, and that I know about the distractions there. It's her biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Going to school and learning things, there's no distractions or relationships there.
Oh yeah, it's great. We don't have a boyfriend drama. You're not coming home at 12 o'clock midnight ready to slash your wrist about that stupid guy that never liked you in the first place. That's the good news. Yeah, but then on the other hand, we're kind of like, but there's no grandchildren coming either. You know, adopt. Even if you buy one, you're going to adopt later when you're financially secure.
I just want to comment on a couple of things that were said there, because I know some people might not necessarily agree with everything. I think it's important to realize that even if you don't have a romantic partner, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to die alone, because you can develop these close friendships and that kind of thing. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with not having a romantic partner. There's many people who have these romantic or sexual relationships who aren't necessarily happy with their relationships. So I think it's more on a case-by-case basis, and not just because you're aromantic, you're probably going to die alone. So I think we shouldn't really concern ourselves about, oh, are you going to be in a relationship or not, as much as are you going to be happy, or that kind of thing. Did we have comments? You have a comment?
And I think everybody needs to realize that everybody has a different definition of meaningful life. And, the norm is, leaving children behind as your legacy. But, if you're not going to have children, and you might be in a lifelong relationship with a really good friend, maybe in a community, maybe your legacy is going to be something different. You're going to discover some great medical breakthrough or whatever the case may be. But as long as your definitions of a meaningful life, you're reaching that, you've got that, and you're happy. That's basically, I think, what most parents want for their children.
Yeah, just right.
Yeah, I just want to mention that, like, what if you're not meeting your definition of a meaningful life, but that's nothing to do with your relationships?
And that would be something you need to work on.
want to focus on, when we see you doing well, then we'll see that this aromantic is good for you. Can distract from your problems and take focus on actually fixing things by sort of putting romantic relationships in this position where they make things better. I mean, you see the divorce rate, like romantic relationships aren't like working out all that well for a lot of women. So,
Yeah.
I was just a direct comment to that is I don't necessarily think it's romantic relationships. I came up to my mom as trans like 3 years ago and she flipped her shit, of course. It was about, well, you're not happy because you're trans, right? And it was never a sexuality thing because I did identify as lesbian before that and she never ever brought that up as being but this new change. And anything that's new that parents don't understand, they're going to blame all your problems on that because it's conceiving on, and because then they don't have to think about it or learn about it, and they hope it will just go away. So I think that's something that's important to keep in mind with stuff like this too, is it's not about really that thing making you happy, it's about your parents gripping onto it and saying, well, if I see you're happy with this, you know what I mean, or if you can show me you're happy with this because they think that, because they don't like it, that's everything about you that's causing the trouble, when obviously it's other things. Just with that, yeah.
Yes.
I guess I'm going to pile on to responding to that further by also pointing out that imagine for a moment if you're a heterosexual child who are depressed, and you wouldn't say to them, well, it's because you're heterosexual here. Stop being attracted to these, no good, rotten, other people, you'd be fine. And you understand that that's, that somebody's sexual orientation is intrinsic, or romantic orientation is often intrinsic, or even if it's not intrinsic, it's well established and long-term and stable, and they can't just sort of turn it on, turn it off, flip a switch, and change their orientation on demand, even if they think it's, they're unhappy for reasons that relate to it, which may or may not be the case. But this kind of goes back to what the other person was saying earlier, that the idea is to focus on the actual problem that's causing unhappiness and try to solve that, and not to blame it on something that's sort of more or less either intrinsic or at least stable and long-term part of who they are, and to focus instead on the specific issue. Like if they're lonely, they should look for ways to meet more people, not try to declare themselves romantic to try to fix the loneliness, for example.
You don't have your hand up the whole time, so I think you
Up and down, but to add on to that, I think that's a great point because there are a lot of people who are, and I know a number of friends who are jumping from relationship to relationship. It doesn't mean they're happy, it just means a lot of times it's from one mess to another mess to another mess, right? And I think the whole issue a lot now is it doesn't matter about your sexuality, it doesn't matter about your romantic level, it matters about yourself. And if you know yourself, then you can go in that direction, the proper direction. And it helps when people around you that care about you understand that and follow along with you, and then you can move in the right direction. But you have to make sure you know where you stand before you can tell everyone else, before you can help direct everyone else to, hopefully follow along with you and get to a relationship that makes you happy.
10 minutes. Yeah, I find that happiness, it takes work, and that work has to do with understanding yourself first before you're able to find out what happiness really means to you. Because happiness can mean different things to different people, whether it's having many friends or just studying or doing something that you love. There's a lot of things that define happiness differently for each person, which is the same thing for the identities that are around. So that's pretty much the
Yes.
One thing that I've run into over and over and over again, and I think part of it ties back to this idea that everybody needs to be free to define what happiness is for themselves and what is right for themselves. But the base idea behind that is that isn't there and really seen in society. Society has some base expectations on what is and isn't a romantic relationship and what even the relationship word means if you were to try to bring it up to somebody. And if you have something that is a feeling towards a person but it isn't romantic, even if you would try to describe that, it becomes difficult to do because you then have to try to describe what you're going for out with the trappings of all the baggage of the rest of the language we currently have. I think that makes something that's kind of difficult to navigate, and I'm not even sure if there's an easy way to deal with it, but that makes for where you've got people who might be aromantic that might want to find somebody who feels like they can't because they're going to be misunderstood, or it might mess up a friendship that's already existing. But there's not good language that the other person would understand to know where they're coming from. And I think that trying to get something out there where we could just all communicate on the same level between whether we're romantic or aromantic or asexual or not asexual would be something to look to in the future. Because in my experience, the aromantic part is actually harder to describe than the asexual part of my orientation.
All right, anyone else? Yes.
I don't know if a question or statement or a comment, but, or another term, I guess. I'm not sure how familiar with this, but apparently, like, I'm not sure what the right term is, but selective romanticism or selective sexuality, where people are not necessarily interested in the male and the female and the trans or whatever, but they're interested in an individual. And even though like it's maybe someone else interested in, totally they're interested in I guess me, but they're not interested in males or females, right? It's very selective. And I thought that was a really weird thing to me, how it's, I guess, based upon who they are.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be more like and?